So, Brotha Truth.
Yes, indeed. How you doing,
I
brother?
heard your name when I started listening to a bunch of podcasts by Brandon Joe Williams.
Okay.
I found him, and he's a young guy. He's like putting all this complex law information into, I don't know, digestible, actionable sort of model. And he was talking about some of the people that have influenced him.
Yeah.
And you're one of the people that he named. So I started to follow you on Instagram, and I was like, all right, I had Brandon on the show. Now I got to get Brotha Truth on the show. So
I would like to meet the brother one day too, man.
yeah, he's cool. He was just out here for a couple of weeks. I introduced him to a bunch of podcasters, and he did a bunch of shows.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to me because, you know, the leaders in this space kind of all have a very unique perspective and use different procedures and focus on different parts of it, you know? So when I look at your stuff, I'm like, I've never heard of half the shit you're talking about. And I've been studying pretty hard for the past few months. So I'm super excited to chat with you about it.
Appreciate you.
The thing about, you know, in an overview kind of way, the thing about this system that many people call the Matrix that spiritually is problematic to me is that somehow humanity's been duped into being the only creature that pays to merely exist on the planet.
Come on.
You just start right there and it's like, well, what's behind that? How did they, like I have my shirt.
I was keeping that earlier.
Just because we're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after us.
Yeah.
You know, there's a they, and it's like, how did they dupe us all into sacrificing our energy, our resources, man? It's like this it's like a parasitic system. And it turns out, from my perspective, and I'm a newbie at this, that how they did it was by manipulating the law.
Absolutely.
Right? And creating layers upon layers upon layers of law.
Absolutely.
And not telling us about the original laws underneath, the biblical laws, the trust law, the equity law, right?
That's
so
exactly
it's like we're just all following the rules and
man's law.
And giving them our energy. And we don't even know there's a whole other system underneath it.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to talk with you. But first, let's get into your origin a little bit. So you grew up in Houston, and you were raised Texas. A Christian.
Yeah, man. I grew up in Houston, Texas, born and raised. Always grew up in the church. My father, my grandfather, my uncles, all of them owned churches when we were younger. And my father now, he's a pastor, a youth pastor at a church. So, I've always kind of grown up just being around that. He also plays the piano at church. So I've always been musically inclined too. I've always been about music and just speaking. But, as I grew older, I kind of felt like I had a different message than, some of my uncles and grandfathers and parents. And, both of my grandfathers actually marched with Martin Luther King. They were both preachers. And so they were very, very prominent in the community. I just, when I kind of went to school in Mississippi, went to Jackson State University in Jackson, Mississippi, just kind of transformed my whole world, my whole life. And, that's kind of what brought me a little bit closer to the culture and things of that nature. And once I kind of graduated from Jackson State, man, and just dealing with just everyday life, I remember just, like I said, getting pulled over for a traffic stop and just being harassed by the police officers and things like that. And, it was opportunities like that kind of shook my soul. It was like, maybe I need to learn this information. And I remember there was a guy on Instagram, on YouTube, his name was Jonah Bay. A guy that I follow. He's a teacher that's been around for years in this same market. And I remember seeing the videos where, cops would pull him over, they let him go. And I'm like, what is he, what's going on here? What am I missing that, that this brother and his organization, his group is doing that I'm not doing? And that's what I learned. It was just all about the language, the legalese and understanding, like you said, we're in two different legal systems here. It's almost a dual legal system. And that's funny you brought up religion, because that plays the enormous role in all of this, man. So just being that I grew up in religion, coming from Houston, pastors all in my family, I wanted to be a preacher, so to say, but I wanted to preach a different message. And that's kind of what led me on my path to becoming Brotha Truth today, man. So, yes.
Wow, cool. And what I'll probably fast forward in here because I really do want to talk about the law, but in a lot of your content, you're talking about Moorish people and Hebrew science and all of this sort of worldly philosophy. What led you to start exploring some of the alternative history and different cultural approaches to sovereignty and so on?
Oh, man, that's a wonderful question. Because I feel like, here in America, to not go back too far, when we were conquered by Britain, so to say. The very first thing that they took was the women, the children, and they changed the education systems. And, with being here in America, especially as quote unquote, what we would call African Americans, we were highly re-educated. And they started off with the religion, the most important part, but they took everything from you, but they made sure they let you keep the religion though, but then they didn't really teach you the equitable side of religion. They didn't teach you the trust law side of the Bible, which is really the Helios Bibliotech, a science book. They didn't teach us none of the science in the Bible. They just taught us the oppressive verses of it. Because, the Bible has been remodified over 2,000 times, by Rome and their people, and they only taught us the parts to keep us in slavery. And I was like, that's when I learned, there is Christianity. But then that's when I started researching, then what's the Hebrew side of this? Because they call themselves Christians, but, or Hebrews, but yet they still separate themselves from the regular Christian movement, the Baptist movement here in America. So I just started questioning, and that's what kind of really led me on my journey. I had to go through the Hebrew science and information first, the laws, the tribes, all that good stuff. And then that's what led me to Moorish science. And then from Moorish science, that led me into, my American Indian tribal heritage. And then from there, the last final step that I've made it to is the English law. English common law. And at the end, we're operating in a British English system. And it was like, if we're going to be here, we're going to exist and we're going to live in this system, we better learn the rules and how to navigate. So, and that's when I learned it doesn't matter if you're, Hebrew, Moor, it doesn't matter what you claim. Really, that's irrelevant. What matters is, do you know how to play the game? Do you understand the Constitution? Do you know equitable law? And do you know how to assert it? What color you are, what race you are, your belief system, none of that matters. So it was just, I had to go through that journey of just learning all the different sides and aspects of my heritage, from a religious perspective. And that's kind of where the Hebrew side came in. But then I had to learn the science perspective. And that's where the Moorish side kind of came in. And then, when I learned the American Indian part to it, that's when I learned the heritage, my actual, culture and what tribe I come from, even here in America, because a lot of people in my family, grandfather, all of them have the long, silky hair. My great grandfather has the ponytail all the way down his back. Yeah, dark dude, darker than me, but long, silky hair. So we've always kind of had that in our family, and, growing up in our culture and our heritage, they always had that saying, oh, well, everybody, we got a little Indian in your family, but we never really knew what that meant. We just always went with that, but nobody in my family ever took it deeper. So I was the one that kind of just questioned all of that, man. And sure enough, I just started with my family. And, once I started shaking up things with my family, and they were like, you know what, Cortland, you might be on to something, Brother Truth. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this over to the world. I'm going to take this to everybody, man, because we can operate totally different. But like you said, there's so many different aspects. The culture and the heritage side was just something that was big for me and what kind of brought me into this. But, once you start getting into the taxes, the discharging, there's so many different aspects to sovereignty. But what I've learned is a lot of it being in this English system, it starts with religion. That's where their whole form of law stems from, religion. And it goes back to a case in 1799. It was the Runkle versus Winehouse, something like that. No, it was the Runkle case. It was in 1799. But basically, that's when they actually made a judgment in that court case that, the United States is a Christian country. And, Christianity and all denominations of Christianity are protected by the Constitution. So knowing that, that's when I learned, like, in the Constitution, you have religious rights that they protect, but were they talking about for the Islamic man or the Buddhists or they specifically said it was for Christianity and this is a Christian country. So once I understood that, that's when I realized it wasn't even so much about my personal beliefs and what I wanted to identify as, but it was about playing the game. And that's what I really learned and realized about the religious aspect. It was more so about knowing to play the game and how to identify to get the most benefits from this system. And once I took it from that angle, man, I never took anything personal. If you have your religious belief, that's cool. You can have your religious beliefs, but when we all come together, we got to play this game and we got to play it a certain way because we were birthed into this system with certain rules and regulations, and you will have to get out. with certain rules and regulations. So, I mean, the United States is a pure corporation, and it's like we've worked at jobs our whole life. And, you know, we always know there's a process to get in the job, and there has to be a process, like a 2 weeks notice, some type of notice, something to get out. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's the same thing. But the cool thing about, you know, just my path and being from Houston and being into religion, you know, I always wanted to help the people. That was always just something that I was real big on. My father was big on. So even when I did make it out, you know, I feel like you have a lot of brothers and sisters in this movement who will get out and just be like, you know what, I'm going to go live in the woods and that's going to be it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But, you know, it was like, what good is learning this information if you're just going to hoard it and stay to yourself somewhere in a quiet corner? So that's, like I said, that's what led to Brotha Truth and my movement, ourselfknowingmaster.com. Because I was like, yo, if I saw how this has dramatically changed my life, I could just wonder how many other people this could transform them too. So, yeah, man, that's when we just started doing tours, just started going all over the world, man, just to speak my message.
Well, it's kind of like that thing in war where part of your battalion gets captured behind enemy lines and you escape, right? Yeah. There's a certain type of character or person that just is motivated to go back in and rescue some of the people that are left behind.
Absolutely,
you know?
Man.
I noticed that too. And I have a history in addiction recovery. And so I've been sober a long time. And something that happens when the grace of God releases you from that bondage, not to everyone, but for me, I had to commit my life to helping pull other people out of that, you know, because it's just, when you've been there, in whatever kind of bondage, whatever kind of enslavement, whether it's in your own mind or from the outside,
absolutely,
and you find the key to get out, it takes a very selfish person to just be like, I'm good now, you guys, good luck. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, no judgment, but
just the heart and soul of the person. You can really tell a person's character, man.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But touching on, you know, the two pieces, the heritage and the religious context for this work, I think is really key because that has so much to do with how the game is set up.
Absolutely.
And so many of our rights are embedded within either heritage and culture.
Absolutely.
Or in religion, as you said, with Christianity kind of being the template for what's allowed and what's not allowed, right? And something that's always tripped me out, and you probably have a lot of insight into this or more than I do, is how on Native American reservations, they have their own law enforcement. There's different rules about there's different rules for gambling, you know, the Indian casinos and all this. And I've always tripped on that. Like, why do they have a whole different setup there? And maybe it has something to do with jurisdiction or something, right? So can you speak to that?
Oh man, wonderful questions. Well, you know, being that, you know, we're American Indians and, you know, and Native Americans to some of those with the reservations and things of that nature, you know, they're considered separate nations from the United States, almost kind of correlating with the United States, but they're not a part of. So with that being stated, that's why they are actually operating. Because there's a difference between American Indians and Native Americans. Let me just say that, because natives is actually a subject of Britain. You know, you're still a British subject by being a Native American. Now, American Indian is actually protected by the treaties. So this is why, you know, and that's kind of getting into 1871 when the Naturalization Act came in.
That's on my list, trust me.
Yeah, they naturalized so many of us into this. And but anyway, you know, just getting back to the question, you know, it's just a different jurisdiction. And basically, we have the ability to do things that the normal U.S. citizen can't do. You know, because we don't operate, so to say, under their codes or statutes. We still have constitutional rights. And you know, just us having our tribes and having our nations, we have our own governments, we have our own, like you say, police force, we have our own, all of that, you know. So at the end of the day, it's more so about, you know, it's business. And that's really all the casinos that you see and all that, because they know in certain jurisdictions, in certain states, they probably can't have casinos. But if we go through this tribal nation, you know, then we can operate outside of the, you know, the state jurisdiction and what they allow. So yeah, man, just being a tribal nation. And that's what I always try to tell people, you know, we are a nation. It's an actual nation, and we have treaties, and, you know, and governments sign treaties with other nations, you know. So a lot of times people try to say, oh, well, the Indians aren't respected. The Indians, I'm like, no, we have treaties. We just aren't asserting them anymore. Just because we might, instead of identifying as the Choctaw Cherokees or, Blackfoot, we might say we're blacks or that we're whites or that we're Latinos or something. But really, all of y'all come from Aztecs or Mayans or, and it's such a mixing pot here in America. Cultures have mixed in for so long. You could have Cherokee in you and same in me, and there could be no difference. You know what I'm saying? Because you might have a great-great-grandmother somewhere down the line. This goes back 7 generations, so it's more so about, just when you start moving under the nation, you have a totally different jurisdiction, a whole totally different set of laws and rules that you can operate under. And that's what I was kind of touching base with you earlier about, when we had, just the guns and things like that. We as American Indians, we can buy guns for hunting, and we have treaty rights and we don't have to have a license for that. But a regular U.S. citizen does. You see what I'm saying?
So U.S. citizens have very few rights.
Very few rights.
Which we'll talk about.
Yeah. So it's crazy.
So much of what has subjugated us, just speaking in this country, but it's true in many countries around the world, is that we've been given fallacious history on where everyone came from and how this was all established, right?
Yeah, that's how they keep us so confused.
I've heard some melanated folks talk about this, and I want to see if you felt into this, that one of the things we've been lied to about is that all dark-skinned people, what we call African Americans, came from Africa.
I knew.
But then some brothers are like, no, we were already here.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that?
My perspective on that is that we're aboriginal to the entire planet, and back in the day you had, millions of years ago, because I believe we've been here for millions of years. And you can look up the Takana boy. They got his body in the, museum now, 1.3 million years old, a real body. They had, what was this? Where all the land masses were all together as one. And basically, when humanity was existing, even back then, according to the Dogons and things of that nature, they say we didn't even come from this planet. We came here, but from a whole other star system. But that's another conversation. But at the end of the day, it's just more so of, how can I say this? We walked the entire planet. We didn't just all go to one navigational center there in Africa and just say, all right, well, we're going to wait till all the continents and the plate tectonic shifts and everything like that. Then once the continents have broken up, now we're going to all get on boats and start exploring the other lands. Like, nah, when the world was one piece, called the Pangea, that's what they refer to it as, the Pangea. We walked the entire planet. We didn't just hover and stay in one spot and say, well, we're not going to go see what the rest of the world here has to offer. So yeah, we're indigenous to the entire planet. And that's what my beliefs is and always will be. And to think that we only came from one part, like I said, we're when we get into the Dogons and stuff later, like I said, we weren't even originally from this planet. And that's what, a lot of the African tribes and things of that nature will actually even tell you. So to even claim one continent in this commercial game has all been a mind trick within itself, because as long as, you have all of your Americans here, claiming that they're Africans, then now you have the British, who can sit here and control our lands because we don't want them. We think we all come from over the seas. So it's all a mental game. It's like, as long as we can teach you in school, make you believe you come from Africa, this Africa, then you'll want to do away with everything here in America and resort your lands and go back to Africa. Like that's the mind trick, because as long as we have that, no, well, we don't want this land here. It wasn't ours anyway. We were slaves, but really this belonged to your great grandmothers in them, so I always tell people, when you actually even go and look in the 1800s, you'll even see some of the old dollar bills, and you'll see people on there farming, people of all colors, and especially a lot of melanated people on the dollar bills farming. I'm like, no, I don't think those were slaves. Those were sharecroppers. Many of your ancestors were sharecroppers, and we were farmers and traders. I know, and in my family, that's where we got the 50 plus acres of land from. My great grandparents used to actually grow food and produce for the actual community. And that's how they used to make a living. So it was like, a lot of us need to understand that, we didn't just come from Africa. We didn't just come over here on slave boats, and our ancestors, many of us have been here for hundreds, in thousands of years,
Wow.
even millions. But that's another conversation. But yeah, man. So that's kind of just my belief system and what I've learned just from studying different cultures and different tribes and just different information. I mean, they got artifacts and things that have been here, I mean, from thousands of years ago, because the whole slave story is only about 200-300 years. We came from Africa 200-300 years ago. And I'm like, yo, you really trying to tell us that we didn't have an existence here at all till we were brought on some boats? It's crazy.
Well, when you look at the land masses, how you're saying before the tectonic plates shifted like that. I mean, if you think about the Inuits, the Alaskan Eskimos, I mean, you could line them up against a bunch of Mongolians from over in like China, Russia.
Absolutely.
You can't even tell the difference other than cultural, right? It's like, but in terms of just looking at two people, I mean, they're pretty damn close, right? So it's like, how do you explain that there's people that are that close in the way that they look and their physical features that are supposedly from different countries or continents?
Right.
It's a trip.
And they just, and what I've always heard about the Inuits, because, a lot of them migrated a long time ago, from, the Mongol culture and some of that stuff, even from Asia, and came over here and set up shop and started living and operating. And that's what I was always told about the Inuits, because they're a little bit different than some of the American Indians. And they ended up blending in with the cultures over time, but of course, that's why a lot of them look like Mongols. And that's why I said there's a lot of America's a huge mixing pot, and especially with the natives and American Indians here, because you have so many different influences. You have a Mongol influence that came through. You have an African influence that came through. Then you have the Frenchmen who came in. Like, you go to Louisiana, I have a lot of family. My family's from Louisiana. You have a lot of Creoles, who are like French and who are also, Indians, American Indians here. But yeah, we would call those people we call them like Creoles. And that's a certain kind of like tribe that almost kind of broke off. Like, they were fixed mulattoes, shall we say. They, were tribal American women and men who had babies with some of these Frenchmen. They ended up creating Creoles, and they kind of branched off and created their own ways, their own language. They spoke French. Everything was totally different. So, I mean, but in itself, that became a tribe. You know what I'm saying? So it's just all these different ways and influences, man. And it's so many different influences from so many different cultures of the world. That's why I was like, you could easily have American Indian in your family bloodline or whatever, just because, if your ancestors came here and just happened to, breed with some of the natives or, American Indians here, you would have it in your heritage too. So that's why I was like, we focus so much on what makes us different, but we should really focus more on what makes us alike and how we can unify around those things and actually use that to overpower the system that we're in, just the
yes.
So,
yes.
yeah, we be so distracted and worry about all the nonsense that doesn't matter, when it comes to commerce and handling your affairs.
Well, and it's not just the human propensity toward tribalism, right? And creating others out of others.
Yeah.
It's also that the system is designed to create that division because disunity makes a population super easy to control, right?
Absolutely.
The infight. I mean, I more and more look at even just like racial stuff aside, just look at the left-right chasm. And it's like, most people don't even realize it's not even like left versus right. It's humanity versus the state.
Yeah.
Like, that's the problem. The state is the problem.
Yeah. That's it.
Not the conservatives, the liberals, black, white. It's like all that is all just a distraction. It's all a mind game to keep us all running around in circles fighting while they're like, cool, Patriot Act. Yeah. They roll it out, right? Yeah. And it's just like David Icke says, the totalitarian tiptoe. It's like we're all like down here bickering. And meanwhile, they're like rolling the tanks in. Yep. Right? Taking away more rights.
Yep. So, wasting time and wasting energy with all the distractions while they're passing things and doing things, like you say. And just even speak on that, it's crazy because I just came back from Jamaica, and of course, which is a British colony, from back in the day. And it was crazy because I was like, I heard they're voting and things happening on the radio. They were talking about their new election season. But just like here, they have two parties, and these two parties have been in war with themselves for, going all the way back to Marley's in them time, Bob Marley.
I was watching the Bob Marley documentary
and you saw that
the other
part
night.
Where they kind of brought them together, but I was like, well, think about that though. You have some of the country who's fighting for this side, some of the countries who's fighting, they're going to war and killing each other. And I'm like, man, all behind politics while the politicians are in the back like, yeah, we're getting what we want. We just got to let you guys self-destruct while we control everything else.
Yeah.
I was like, man, we got to stop existing and actually start controlling, Yeah.
Two masks on the same face.
Yeah. Two masks. So it doesn't matter really what country you're in.
It's like a spinning head. You know what I mean? It's like,
absolutely.
You're like, I want that guy, not that guy. It's like, it's the same guy.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue into maybe for people not familiar with any of this law stuff. I mean, I've only done one show dedicated to this. Maybe another one would have come out by the time yours comes out. But, as I was talking about earlier, we have kind of this original system of law that's essentially just based on the golden rule. It's like, don't defraud people, don't hurt people's property, don't hurt other people.
Yeah.
Basically 3 rules.
Yeah.
I'm down with that. Like, your average person, I think, is a good person and is willing to uphold that and has no problem that there are consequences for those that don't uphold that, right? It's like,
absolutely.
Like Brandon Joe talks about, you can think about common law as the Old West, right? You have a town sheriff.
Absolutely.
Everyone's kind of following the rules. You have some shady fucker comes into town and steals something or hurts somebody. Yeah. And the sheriff goes and throws him in the clink, and then the town, a group of their peers comes together and says, we think, he should be kicked out of the town or he should be hung or he should be locked in the little town jail for 6 months, right?
Absolutely.
It's like there's a simplicity in that gives humanity the benefit of the doubt that the majority of us are fair and equitable.
Yeah.
And
that's it.
And that's what you don't need the state to enforce that. That's just like the common good.
That's the common law. That's the laws that we all share in common.
Yeah.
That's exactly what common law means.
Maybe you could break down kind of, the different layers of law from that through the Admiralty, Maritime, Commerce, and kind of show us where we're stuck at the point now because we're all in these commercial laws and we don't know it. Maybe just break that down for us. Because I think that's the crux of unlocking the prison, the jail cell.
Yeah.
Really is understanding, there's a whole other thing that exists here.
Yeah.
It's just buried.
Yeah, it's just buried. And I'll just say, first it started in England with the English common law. And a lot of this happened after the Frenchman, the Norman king, took over the Anglo-Saxons there. And that's when they started in 1099, actually. That's when the Battle of Hastings happened, and that's when the Frenchmen ended up taking over.
I wonder if they call it Form 1099 because
wow, I never thought of damn, that's a good question.
Just a guess. Just a guess.
But so the French Norman king, he ended up coming there and he took the Anglo-Saxon law, which was more so the indigenous ways of they were doing things, and he combined it with the French Norman law, and they created a new kind of law called English common law, where the Frenchmen and the English barons and the French barons, they could all come together and agree and say, hey, let's operate and let's do this. So they ended up taking that law and they ended up taking that all across the world to their different colonies and places that they ended up conquering over time. And these were just English common laws. And again, these were just laws that we all shared together as common people. And basically what this was, not even to get into the Constitution yet. It goes back to the Magna Carta, when again, you had these Frenchmen who came and took over the English throne there and the Anglo-Saxons. And, he was taxing the people, sending them to war, taxing the people. And that's when the English barons had got upset. And they were like, hey, man, you're going to have to chill out with this or else we're going to have your head for this. And that's when they, set down King John. That's where like the whole Robin Hood, that whole story kind of comes from this story here. And, they sat down King John, all the English barons, and they were like, listen, man, you're either going to sign this contract and it's going to act as a constitution and it's going to be a new constitutional monarch. And you're going to have to let we the people respect our God-given rights. It just goes down to this. We don't need all this extra stuff, code, statutes like Rome. All we want you to do is respect our God-given rights. And you can't tax us. You can't do any of this without our consent and without our permission. And this is really the roots of all constitutions across the world. And, and later on, they ended up creating the English Bill of Rights, which got added kind of to the Magna Carta. And that's where they ended up taking this blueprint across the world, to Jamaica, to the United States, to Canada. And they all set up these English common laws. And it was all based upon a constitution that all stemmed from the Magna Carta. So the Magna Carta is the highest of all constitutions of any English country across the world. If it's ever been an English colony, an English common law has been set up, the Magna Carta is actually the highest of the high there. But then you have the United States, and every single country itself has a constitution that's actually there to protect its people. but again, over the Constitution is the Magna Carta. So what I always tell people, we can study our constitutions too, but also know the Magna Carta because that supersedes everything in their English system. So, but anyway, moving along, every single state has a constitution, which is all backed and protects your English common law rights, which are really just your rights that are protected by God, your God-given rights. And again, you kind of have equity, which is a little bit different. That's a branch of English common law, but that's kind of more built upon fairness and equality. So, getting like a constitutional remedy sometime can kind of go back more so to, monetary damages and charges. But then you can also have equity law and you can get equitable relief in the courtroom, which is a totally different relief. And equity is purely about fairness. And it's like, I can, let's say you took something from me and it was like, I'm not here to sue you for money. I just want what's mine returned back to me. So I could go into a courtroom and have the judge rule on and give me an equitable relief for fairness and be like, yo, Mr. Luke, I need you to go ahead and give Brotha Truth back his book, or whatever. And that's what, they can rule on fairness. So it's really, that's English common law. So I'll just say that. I know that was kind of long-winded, but that's English common law.
That's great. And it needs to be long-winded because it's complex.
It is.
It's like,
yeah. And what happened was in 1300s, I believe it was 1306. I can't remember 1307 specifically, but you had someone by the name of Pope Boniface VIII. And what he actually did was he came out with something called the Unum Sanctum. And basically this was Rome, and he made it declaring that, we are going to make every single human being on this planet a subject of the Roman Pontiff. We want to make them all servants and because how Rome saw it at the time in the 1300s, if you weren't a Christian, you were a savage, so they were like, yo, we got to go out here and civilize the world. That's what the whole movement was about. It was 1312. That's what it was. And 1312, Pope Boniface VIII did the Unum Sanctum papers, and he made that declaration. And what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of the countries and the kings during these times, they were all influenced religiously by the Pope. There was no country back then that really operated that didn't have someone from the Pope that was there, from the Vatican to oversee that whole kind of movement. So once you had the Pope, who's, was from the Roman Catholic Church that comes from, Roman civil laws and things of that nature. That's when they said, well, you know what? I'm going to declare all of my, European powers, France, Germany, Britain, I'm going to declare, we're basically going to declare war on the world. I want you all to go out and civilize the world. Spain sent people over there. Portugal went over here to Brazil. You had Frenchmen who went to Haiti and South, and then you had the British who went there. So they just, once they got the calling from the church, go out and take over. That's exactly what they did. And, eventually, and that's another little story part, but eventually England, they were like, yo, we're not getting down with this whole Roman movement, man. We don't want to be a part of this. Like, no, they ain't nothing to do with us. But, and that's when, in 1707, unfortunately, this is when the sovereign kingdom of England came down. Because in 1707, you actually had the queen at the time. She actually gave over the power because she didn't have an heir. She didn't have any child. Her one child had died. So she was just going to be the last one on the throne. So they were like, yo, before you die, let's go ahead and get the next person coming in line after you. And that's when the Pope had kind of came in and he, got to influencing her. And he was like, yo, I want you to give the power to this German king, and we want you to pass over the throne to this German king. And the German king at the time was heavily controlled by the Pope and influenced by them. So, after 1707, she signed the act. And basically from there, that's when the sovereign kingdom of England fell, all of that. And then that's when they say, you know what? We're going to bring Scotland. We're going to bring Ireland. We're going to unite all of y'all together. And we're just going to call it the United Kingdom now. So no longer is this a sovereign kingdom of Scotland or England, because it's crazy. You'll watch the soccer games in the World Cup and they'll play as England. They'll play as, but when you actually go to the country, it's only UK flags everywhere and all of those, the England, it's like, just like the United States. You have the United States of America, the sovereign republic, and then you have the United States Corporation, two different governments. So that's how they ended up conquering England. So they were like, you know what? The Pope was like, No, I don't want the world to be operating on their free God-given rights. I want the world to operate through me, which is why, the Catholic Church has this like confession booth where, the Pope is supposed to be the middleman between you and God, to kind of like hear, your confessions. And he's supposed to take your message up to God and deliver them for you. That goes all the way back to 1312 and Pope Boniface. He was like, yo, I want to make all of them savage, I want to make all of them, civilized, and they basically got to answer to us. So, the Roman laws, what they said, well, you know what? Since we've taken over England and the UK now, all of the colonies that are a part of English, all of these English common law countries that y'all have set up now, I want you to convert those into civil law now. I want you to operate under maritime law, and that's when they said, all right, well, that means we're going to have to do a lot of conversion because, all of these countries got common law already set up. They've been here for years. And that's when they were like, well, we don't care. We're going to come in with a whole new set of laws. We're going to reincorporate everything, and we're going to bring people into our new jurisdiction that we're going to create. And that's kind of what led to the 1871 and the Naturalization Act.
Yes,
because they created a new corporation. You had all these European bankers. You had the Pope, all of them who came over here after the Civil War. They were like, yo, your country's in turmoil, man. You need money. Come holler at me. I got you. And that's what ended up, they gave us a big loan. And in order to get that loan, we had to reincorporate as a whole new country. And that's what the Naturalization Act kind of did too. And, they created the United States Corporation in. And then that's when they started naturalizing us into their corporation as U.S. citizens. Yeah. And that's when we lost our heritage.
So the way I understand this, and please correct me if I get any of it wrong, but, I'm always trying to track these different sort of punctuation marks where things have gone awry, right? So 1871, at the end of the Civil War, you have the ratification of the 14th Amendment, which turns out actually wasn't ratified. I don't know if you
right.
So that's another thing. Then you have the Federal Reserve Act, 1913. Yep. Then in 1933, you got the
what is that?
I wrote it down.
Not the Great Depression, but when they did the
Emergency Banking Act, right?
Yeah.
Then shortly after that, the Social Security Act, right? So you have like every few years, every few decades, there's like a boom, a big power grab.
They were taking powers away, slowly but surely.
Yeah. But the thing that is really nefarious, as far as my understanding, is at the end of the Civil War, right? You had like a faction of people, probably outside of the country too, the controllers from overseas, but within this country, you got like a faction of people that are like, we got to free the slaves. This is fucked up.
Yeah.
And you have people for whom it was advantageous, and for whatever reason, they didn't want to stop that system, right? Because they're all getting rich off the labor of the slaves, right? So there was like a compromise where they said, okay, well, we're gonna free the slaves, but we're gonna make them essentially a second-class citizen.
Absolutely.
So rather than being a citizen of the state of the Southwest Territory we call Tennessee, or the Republic of Texas, or whatever the 35 or so kind of nation states at that time, they pulled a huge fast one, right?
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, everyone, you're free. You guys do whatever you want, but you're no longer a state citizen or a sovereign. Now you're a federal citizen, aka a U.S. citizen, which is essentially a subcorporation of the corporation called the United States, which is super messed up. But then it seems like they figured out this is working so well for us. They did it to everyone. They started naturalizing everyone, not just the freed slaves.
That's exactly
is that how it went down?
That's exactly how it went. And it's funny you say that because, again, after 1871 and the Naturalization Act, they created this new corporation, this new United States. And they needed, they were bringing in new members and naturalizing new people. And this new United States operated under codes and statutes. It no longer operated under the original United States of America, the Republic, which was constitutional, which was just, don't infringe on me, I won't infringe on you, like we were speaking about earlier. But the new United States came with taxation. It came with, different codes, different statutes. And the reason for it, and it goes all the way back to the 1700s, because we owe British and Europeans so much money from just war debts and things of that over the years. And in 1871, they loaned us money again. So we took on more loans that we couldn't pay off, and that kind of gets into the 1933 and the whole crash and stuff like that. But anyway, when they created this new corporation in 1871, that's what it was all about. It's a whole new corporation of rules, laws, regulations, and now we can tax you. See, the power about the Magna Carta was, and why it was so powerful, you had kings like King Charles back in the day, when the Magna Carta was out in England, he was like, yo, I don't care about these citizens. I don't care about a Magna Carta. I'm going to do what I want to do, and he just totally disregarded it, and the people, the barons, they ended up swooping him up, threw him in court, and then they had him executed. And this was the king, first king, to ever be executed by the people. And they chopped his head off because it was like, yo, you went against the Magna Carta. You can't do that. You swore to uphold this Magna Carta. Now this is basically, what is that? When you go against the countrymen, treason. So they were like, no, man, chop his head off, and they killed him. So, and that was in the mid 1600s. That's why in 1707, before the Rome had put in his plan, and took over England and turned it into the UK, he was like, yo, we got to get them out of the sovereign kingdom of England because England is tied into the Magna Carta. And any king that we bring in, he has to abide by the Magna Carta if we're going to be operating from England. That's why they said, we're going to just put this all together, all these countries, and we're just going to call y'all the United Kingdom, and we're going to create a new corporation, just like how they did there in the States, just like how they did here. We were a sovereign country first, United States of America, and then they turned us into the United States, and they started naturalizing the sin. Same thing happened in the UK. They were England, they were Scotland, they were Ireland, and they said, let's call it the UK. Now let's start naturalizing and bringing them in and making them citizens of the UK. And that's how they started snatching their rights too. So, I mean, it was all the same thing, but it all goes back to Rome starting there in 1707. And then after 1707, that's when the whole game just, that's when Rome really had his foot in the game. And he was like, all right, now everywhere that the Englishmen has went, I got to come back and put codes and statutes now. So that's why they'd be like, that's man's law. You have God's law, which is like trust law, which is don't infringe on me and, just the trust law of things. And then you have man's law, which are different codes and statutes. And those damn near change every day. They vote and whatever. That's also that. I always try to tell people when it comes to law, if you ever want to know if something is lawful, because there's a difference between lawful and legal. Lawful is constitutional. That's God's right. And then you have legal. That's codes, that's statutes, that's man's law. Those are consumer, codes and statutes. If you ever have to ask if something is lawful or legal, you should go and always ask, well, is it in the organic state constitution? Because here in Texas, we have the 1876 organic state constitution. And if it doesn't say that I need a license to drive, or a license to do this, or a license to do that, then that means that's a code or a statute which was passed by man. And that really doesn't apply to me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm operating under the constitutional law and what's lawful. And that's what the whole status correction thing is about. Just changing your mindset of how and what laws you want to operate under. Do I want to, that's what the Great Awakening is about. It's like, okay, now I'm up, I'm awake, I'm reborn again. I can go biblically with all of this, but I'm reborn again. And it's like, okay, well, now that I have a new, fresh mind, do I still want to operate under codes and statutes for slaves? Or do I want to go back to God's law and operate under the Constitution and just don't infringe on me and I won't infringe on you? It's just life is so much simpler. You know what I'm saying? When you can worry about God's law. So, once you can totally understand the two, just the basis first. That's why I always start with history, because once you can understand the basis and how we got here to where we are today, you'll know how we need to go moving forward and how we get there. But it starts with knowing that there is English common law in play and there is Roman military law in play. Now, the one that applies to you all depends on your status of knowing who and what you are. If you believe you're a U.S. citizen, then yes, you're supposed to pay taxes. You're supposed to get pulled out the car. You're supposed to you're supposed to be treated as a chattel slave. That's what police policy enforcers are here to do. They are here to control property of the state, but they work and they serve we the people. It's a difference. They're servants of the state, so and the best constitution that shows that is, I believe it's the 1876. It's the one there in Georgia. They have their actual constitution. It says it the best. It's like it's police enforcers or policy enforcers. No, it says agents of the states are servants and they work for us. It literally says that in the Constitution. But again, when we're operating as U.S. citizens, as corporate entities, it's their job to control corporate property. They work for the real man, we the people, but they control. So that's when I started to learn, well, hold on. I got pulled over by this police officer and it's crazy. I see him walking up to to the car, and it's like, all right, Quillen, Brother Truth, you've been doing all this studying. It's game time, Now, you know what you're supposed to say. And as soon as he pulled up, license and registration. And that's why I was like, well, let's just go ahead and get it started. Let's see what happens. I was like, oh, well, I'm not driving. I'm traveling freely under my constitutional Bill of Rights. And when I kind of said that, he looked at me. He was like, that's interesting. Well, here and then, that's when he tested me again. He knew, because it's a legalese. It's all a conversation. He was like, well, here in the state of Texas, you're supposed to be driving with a seatbelt on. I was like, oh, well, luckily, I don't live in the state of Texas. I live in the Texas territory, the Republic. And, and once I said that, he looked at me and said, all right, sir, you have a good day.
Are you serious?
Enjoy your day. Yep. Boom. And he let me go, and that was, I didn't have to pull out any tribal ID. I didn't have to do any of that. It was literally just a conversation. And, but again, that all comes with knowing and understanding the different forms of law, because before I even have to pull out my tribal card, or before I had to do the Cherokee, I could simply, that's why I was like, I can go to Canada, I can go to Jamaica, I go to all these places and I'm good just because I know English common law, and that's the law there. That's what every policy enforcer swore to uphold. Now, they play the codes and the statutes for the 95% of the masses who don't know what the hell is going on. But for that 5% that does, and that's in the know, they respect us, and no reason for them to get thrown into jail or get their heads chopped off because they swore to uphold that Constitution. And if you try to persecute me with Roman laws, you can't uphold an American Constitution, but then persecute me with Roman laws. These are two different, that's treason. So, once you get the calling them out, well, hold on. Didn't you swore to uphold the Constitution, but yet you're trying to hit me for a Roman code and statute? Once they know, all right, sir, you have a good day. We'll because again, you're literally 1 out of 100. I got 99 other, people to beat up on who have no clue what's going on. Why would I care about the one person who could actually get me thrown in jail as a policy enforcer? So once I understood that, I was like, yo, this is a game, and once I proved myself to myself, that one police stop that I had, and the police officer looked at me and he had this smirk and he was like, you enjoy yourself. You have a good day, sir. And that, and just living my whole life in fear of police officers, and then having that victory, that little small victory, it transformed my mind forever. And then that's when I realized, like, now every time I talk to a police officer, or every time I talk to a judge, or every time I talk to a lawyer, I speak with law and speak with authority, and they respect it. They don't look at me as the normal, typical, quote unquote, black man. They're like, nah, he's a little different. He had the Constitution. He's speaking that equity, because it's like, nah. That's why I was like, I don't even have to play with all of the heritage and culture stuff. Like, I'm going to play the English game. I speak English. I have an English last name. I have English heritage too. That's my surname heritage. Just like I have an American heritage from my mother here. We're American, but at the end of the day, my father's last name is white, and that stems from England. You know what I'm saying? So it's important to know that while we have American heritage, we also have European heritage. And since this is a European operation that's running over here, we got to go back to our European heritage too and use that back against them. That's why it's like, yeah, I don't care where I go. I can go to Canada. I can go to wherever, because if Britain or England had ever went there and, and set up shop, I'm good, because I can always stand on English common law. Period.
Now, on that note, specifically dealing with the policy enforcers for the corporation known as the United States, located in the District of Columbia.
Yeah. There you go.
It's so mind blowing, dude. When you start to learn this stuff, it's really is the Matrix. Yeah. We've been living in this facsimile world. But to your point of understanding the language and understanding your God-given rights, your constitutional rights, et cetera, right? I've seen, because there's a few videos floating around of these like sovereign citizens, right?
Yeah.
which is an oxymoron, where they're very aggressive toward the policy enforcers.
Yeah,
very combative.
Yeah.
And they kind of know a little of the language.
Yeah.
And then their ass gets pulled out of the car and arrested. And that's the end of it, right?
Yep.
It seems to me that one of the fundamental parts of just that piece, like just dealing with courts, dealing with policy enforcers, is first being diplomatic and being respectful, right? And understanding that person was just indoctrinated into that system of law. And they don't even know that this shit, most of them, right?
Absolutely.
But it seems that it would be important to have change your citizenship status, maybe get, the DOT plates, have your diplomatic passport, like to have your status correction in the can so that you're not just speaking the language, but when they actually run your ID, like run your passport card, they see that you don't only know the lingo,
your actual status.
But that you've actually reverted yourself back to being an American or a state national, right? So what do you think some of the downsides of kind of half-assing it are for people that kind of just learn the language and end up getting themselves in more trouble than they would have been in the first place?
Man, that's a good question, because I feel like you have so many people, and I know earlier you were talking about some people want to come in just to learn a discharge or just to, get little certain bits and pieces instead of taking the time to learn the whole bigger picture and understand why everything is happening or, So, I mean, you have a lot of students who are halfway do things and won't really, like I said, you have some who would just take the program to learn how to discharge. But then when you get pulled over by police or whatever it may be, you don't know how to stand on your square. You don't even know the language. You don't know anything about the Constitution. You just know one specific thing on filling out an affidavit on how to discharge my school loan. That's all you knew.
And because they know the legalese so well, they'll trick your ass into jurisdiction
just like that
every 2 seconds. I mean, that's the thing.
That's how legalese works.
You start answering any questions. Well, do you have a driver's license? Yeah, but it's not with me. Boom.
Got you.
What I mean?
That's it.
Look up your VIN. Oh, your car is registered. So the state of Texas actually owns your car and you're basically leasing it from the state. You know what I mean? It's like, it gets so deep that I think if you don't have that level of confidence from educating yourself, that you're going to slip up or chicken out. And then there you go. And it's like, you might as well have just paid the ticket and not even tried to,
That's
retain
how they live,
your rights.
off the fear. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Let's go into what I think is one of the most fascinating parts about this. So we've discussed how there's layers of law, right? So you have this original landmass that we call the United States of America, right? And we have these original laws, as you described, that are just based on common law and just golden rule type stuff. And they superimpose this kind of fictitious law of commerce, this Roman military law that you described. But there's a duality there, right? And most of us don't know the subfloor there. We're just like up on the upper level, kind of getting shafted. Well, not kind of, dramatically getting shafted, especially in the last 4 years. But the other duality that is mind-blowing is the birth certificate, right? And the Social Security Act, where when you're born in this country, in a hospital, unless you're, home birth and your parents are woke to all this shit, what's going to happen is they're going to say, hey, we got a birth certificate here, sign here.
Yep, that's where it starts.
Right? And then that birth certificate's issued to your parents with an all capitals name. And they just created a ens legis, a sub-corporation that is essentially an employee of the corporation known as the United States, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like we're all running around with two countries and we're all running around as two people.
Absolutely.
There's the living, breathing man or woman. That is, to me, has all the rights that a bear or a deer has. Like, we should just be able to do whatever we want, not have to pay to be here. Like, who signed us up for this shit? How we get signed up is that birth certificate. So could you break down how that all works?
I just said that was beautifully broken down even by you already. That was good how you segued that in.
I'm studying, dude. I'm trying to learn this stuff as fast as I can.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful though, man. Because that's exactly it. On the private side, again, this all goes back to public and private, and things of that nature, constitutional and codes and statutes. That's really the meat and bones of all of that. So, but the only way that Rome was able to pull you into their jurisdiction, they had to birth, B-E-R-T-H, not B-I-R-T-H. Birthing, B-I-R-T-H, is for like coming out the canal, the womb, coming out the womb of a woman. Birth, B-E-R-T-H, is actually like mooring through the waters, and you're actually birthing and you land at a dock, So when you have a birth certificate, you're basically swimming through the waters of your mother's wombs, and then you land at a dock. In your birth, B-E-R-T-H, and that dock, quote unquote, is the doctor, and that's the one that actually takes you, and he unloads the cargo off of the ship, which is the baby. You unload the cargo out of the mother, which is the mother's vessel, unload the cargo, and they turn around and they register that cargo with the state registrar. And that's why the registrar signs your birth certificate too as well, because now you've actually been conveyed into their system as actual goods. And now, like you say, you're given that social, you have the whole trust set up, everything. Now they've literally brought you in and they've created a vessel now for their maritime commercial world of law just for you now. And, and your parents sign off on it, so, I mean, everything all comes down to the consent of your mother. Truly. Father, not so much. And some states don't even really need the father's signature. They don't, because they know truly everything starts with the mother, so they attack the mothers and they get the baby that way. And the state kind of acts as the father, and he bursts him into this new corporation. So, that's kind of how that whole situation works, man. It starts there. And, unfortunately, it's about, even on your birth certificate, they know, I did want to say that, even on your birth certificate, they know that you're not considered a U.S. citizen. This is still something you have to choose to be. Nowhere on your birth certificate does it say you're a U.S. citizen.
Right.
It just says,
and then you get
the state,
you get a job when you're 16 at Pizza Hut or whatever, and you sign that I-9 and it says, are you a U.S. citizen? You're like, hell yeah, I am.
Yeah, I'm
Boom,
here.
you just contracted.
There you go. And now you just took away your sovereign constitutional rights to play their Roman game. Even with that driver's license, half of the time, most of these people only get tickets because they're pulled in according to their driver's license, which is connected to that social. You know what I'm saying? So, that's how the whole charging game works, because that treasury, that social is an account. It's almost like an account to benefit you, to pay for your bills or whatever it may be. And because it's almost like insurance, shall I say. You get into a accident, or you get into something commercially out here, you were speeding in their traffic, you were speeding in their commercial world, where for that violation, I have to charge your insurance accounts to recompensate us for your violation. That's how the whole Social Security number works. But that's why, it's all connected to damn near every public document that you have, because they always need that account to charge. And that's connected to credits, because there is no more money. They took all the gold and silver. So, that's, once I kind of figured that out and just learned that, this all stems back to them birthing us into this system and making us a part of their corporation. They created it, but it still doesn't apply until we consent to it.
Right.
We have to say we are that avatar,
See, this piece of it to me is really empowering on a lot of levels, because, I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I just hated authority. You know what I'm saying? I just if there's a rule, I'm going to break it, even if I don't want to break it, just because I have to break it.
Absolutely.
Because you told me there's a rule.
Right. Same.
What gives you the right? You got me in a lot of trouble. I'm not saying it's a good way to live, but it's just how I'm wired.
Yeah, same.
So my whole life, especially when the pandemic stuff happened, I'm just I'm just seething with anger against the state for what they've done to me, right? Feeling like a victim, feeling very disempowered, and also very afraid of them, right? It's like, even when I moved to Texas, I'm like, I feel safer than in California, but what if the fucking mRNA police come and knock on my door and they're like, hey, we see here that you haven't taken the shot. I mean, it could go there. It has in history. It's been worse in history than that even, right? They just come take you and put you on a train, right? Yep. So I'm living in all this fear and this resentment. As then I started to learn about the stuff we're talking about here today, it's so empowering, because I can take responsibility that I have, however unknowingly, and however I might have been kind of deceived. And there were a lot of lies of omission. There was a lot of things that I wasn't told. Sign here, sign this, sign that. My mom signing the birth certificate.
Absolutely.
There wasn't full disclosure. So there was some shadiness for sure.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's on me, because I'm the one that signed my passport application. I'm the one that, signed W-9s and did my driver's license. So
Absolutely.
It's like, I unknowingly opted into this system.
That's it.
And now I'm over here, I don't like the system. Yeah. It's like, well, they're not going to tell you how to get out of it.
Right.
Because they didn't even tell you were getting into it.
Right. That's exactly it.
So a guy like you comes along and is like, hey, here's how you got into it. Yeah. Take responsibility. And here's how you get out of it, right?
Yeah, that's it.
That to me is so empowering. And it's also, all this stuff to me is I'm not like a religious person, but I'm definitely a very spiritual person.
Same.
And it's like, this is a spiritual game.
It is.
And
100%.
You start learning about this stuff and it becomes an act of self-love.
Man.
Right? Where it's like,
you hitting it on the nail. That's
kind of, I feel my body light up when we talk about this stuff. And I actually have much less anger toward the parasitic system.
That's
kind of like
it.
if you're feeling sick and you get a gut test and you have a bunch of parasites, you don't hate the parasites. They're just trying to survive, right?
Yeah.
You get a tick on you, you're not like, oh, this tick, I hate this tick.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, I'm going to just get some tweezers, pull the tick off, have a nice life, right?
Yeah.
And so we have this parasitic, banking cartels and all this maritime law and all this stuff. And it's like, these are just people that seem to lack creativity. They can't produce.
Yeah.
So they create this parasitic system to siphon the energy and resources from those of us who are creative and connected to our creator that do produce.
Right.
So you kind of see like, oh, they're just kind of fighting for their survival. And that's why they create these intricate webs of all these fallacious laws and all this shit.
Yeah.
You don't have to hate them. You don't have to fight them.
Exactly.
You can love yourself enough to educate yourself,
man,
and free yourself.
That's it, right? That's it.
That's beautiful.
That's it.
It makes me hate the whole thing much less because I'm just like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting.
Man, you just hit it on the head, and that's a big part that I try to bring to, even the urban community, the quote unquote African American, because we've been taught and so miseducated to hate a certain type of people or to hate a certain type of this. And it's like, bro, you really just need to learn and educate yourself because really, truly, that's not how that story quite went, and once you understand too that, it was, a lot of us, King James and all this, these were brothers anyway. We even, this was about nationality. This was never about race. Like, these were melanated men who were like, yo, I want that land over there. I'm going to go get they shit. It had nothing to do with race. And they just, they all came together as British and Englishmen and came over here and took some shit. So, it's just, yeah, man, that's the part. And, you were saying about self-love, because again, once I tested myself and that police officer had, pulled me over and I stood on my square. And, once he was like, you have a good day, sir. It was like, boom, I had this burst of energy. Like, whoa, you just evolved. You just reached a whole new level.
Jedi shit.
Yeah, you just broke through level 1.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, yo, well, what else can I do? Can I do the cars now? Can I do the whoop whoop? And I was like, whoa, I can remove all my school dates. Like, that didn't even happen. I could discharge cars. I could, then you start figuring out different levels of the matrix. And then that's when you start realizing like, damn, I have God power. You know what I'm saying? And, and that's what
God mode.
Yeah, God mode, man, And it's, and like I always said, man, the Bible is a science book and it's a history book. And, and in Psalms 82:6 and John 10, verse 34, it'll always tell you, ye are gods, but are you taking the power to take control over your life? Or, because again, that's what it also says in Genesis 1:26. It says, God was supposed to be passing down the ability for us to control the dominions of, control our own dominions, control all the birds and control all the things of the earth, because this was all about trust law. And he passed down the trust, because that's what the Bible is. It's his will and testament, you know what I'm saying, for our benefit. We're the beneficiaries of this trust.
Whoa.
You know what I'm saying? To control.
Hold up. Say that again. Say that again. That was deep.
Yeah. So, you have God, because again, in trust law, you have 3 positions. You have the creator who created the trust. And then you also have trustees. And then you have the beneficiaries, so basically you had this God who created, the original trust for us. And, and then you had Jesus who was like, the trustee at one time. And, he left his will and testament for us to be the trustees now, to come here and control over the birds and the flocks and the animals, the world, which was basically saying that now, we were the beneficiaries and we have the control, through trust to control all of this world. The benefit is for us as the beneficiaries. We just have to know who we are. And that's what that, even dabbling in, you get into the Ceste Cuvée trust, all of that, we're the beneficiaries of that trust. And they always say God gave you everything that you needed, but he did. He gave you that social in this commercial system that really is here to insure you and cover all of your charges. That's why you have unlimited credit. There is no money. So it's like you have everything in life. God gave you everything that you need, but did you know your position? Did you understand the commerce side of it, the trust law, or were you caught up in the dogmatic part of religion, running around the church, hallelujah, hallelujah, whatever? That's cool, but did you get the trust part of it? Did you become the beneficiary so that you could take control over your situation? So that's when I started getting into equity law. And I started realizing as the beneficiaries, we had to start taking suretyship. We had to take subrogation, which was just like, it's almost like you see these basketball or NFL players. They all have an agent who speaks for them. They don't really ever do the speaking. They have agents.
Right.
It's the same way we're in the game and we're a player in the game. That name all caps, that's an avatar. He's a player in the game. But we have to take subrogation as the real living man to come over here and say, yo, I'm his agent for this straw man. I'm not the name all caps. I'm the agent speaking for the name all caps. I'm the secured party. I'm the party securing the debtor here that's playing in the game. So it's like, once I understood that, it was like, yo, because subrogation, when you look at the definition of it, that's just one person stepping in the position of another to claim a benefit on behalf of an insurance claim. So it's like, well, hold on. That's when I learned that we have the power. I was like, wait a minute, this cop charged me and stopped me for driving? Wait a minute, that's unconstitutional. That's when I said, hold on, the private man has to put on my subrogation boots. And I go up in these courtrooms and it's like, well, wait a minute. According to the law, this was unlawful because you said that you swore to uphold the Constitution and my right to travel. But yet here you have a ticket where you charged me under Roman law. There's a problem here, and when I come in there speaking as a man, speaking on behalf, and I have the power of attorney over my own estate, that's when they're like, all right, sir, well, hey, let's put him at the end of the docket, and if he comes back in here again, put him at the end and let everybody else go out. Then we can just bring him up here and dismiss his case.
There's that language again, docket.
Yeah, that the docket. Come on, you got to cross the, what is that?
The bar.
The bar. Yeah. All of this kind of stuff and actually load the boat to get on their vessel to do business with them. That's what all of that's about. So it's like, once I understood the maritime part of this, the business part of this, everything changes, bro. When we can take our personal feelings out of this and not be so caught up in the perceptions and the worldly images that they show in the media and just understand the business. Man, you have a whole totally different perspective. Because I'm a business entrepreneurship major. I went to college for business. So that's why it was a lot easier for me to kind of catch it, compared to a lot of my brothers and sisters because they were so deep into it. They had feelings, emotion. Oh, forget Trump, Biden, this, whoop, whoop. Everything was so emotional to them. But I'm like, yo, it's just business.
Yeah.
They don't really care about you.
Well, that must have been helpful going to business school because you understand the nature of corporate liability protection, right? Like why we get S corps and LLCs and why we get trust and wills and all this kind of stuff. So
absolutely.
You definitely would have had an advantage there because I don't know anything about all that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I just kind of figured it out as I go to try to minimize the ding of the taxes, But I want to go back to the birth certificate. To me, I don't know why I'm always so hung up on this. It's so fascinating. I was looking at a couple of mine today.
Okay.
Because we have a meeting of a few guys, as you know, coming over today where we talk about this stuff and help support one another. And a while ago, I noticed that my birth certificate is on bond paper. It looks like a financial instrument, right?
Just like the dollar bill.
Yeah, exactly. And I never noticed this, but my old one that I had since I was a kid, on the bottom
has the numbers.
It has the numbers, but it says this is a banknote.
Yeah,
straight up
as a banknote.
I was like, how did my whole life I've had to like show that to get ID or whatever, right? And I'm like, how did I never see that my birth certificate is a banknote?
Yep.
Another trippy thing about my particular situation is, I just want to get all my documents in order. I don't know how deep I'm going to go into all this. It's just, I'm just educating at this point for the most part. But I found that it's important to get your long form birth certificate, right? Which is your certificate of live birth, where your name is not in capital letters. So I tried to order mine from the state of Colorado, where I was born. They won't even
give you that now.
Yeah, and they were like, "We don't do that. Sorry, it ain't gonna happen."
Yeah,
I was like, "Whoa, okay." Yeah. But they did send me a couple different versions of it, that are different than my original one, but they're all on bond paper. They all have these CUSIP numbers and all this shit on there. And then I started to learn, and maybe you could speak to this, that if you do research on your birth certificate, that it's been, I think, like traded on the stock
multiple
market
times.
It's like, what is up with that part of it?
Well, again, all of this is attached to your social. This is attached to your ceste. So, I mean, the times that you've given your social for different applications and they've sold your note or whatever it is to another person or whatever. Your shit is on the stock market. You went and filled out an application for a car, and then, that car dealership turned around and sold that application to the bank. Then the bank's taking that and they're flipping it times 10. So I mean, they're putting this note, they're flipping securities even more. And they're selling it to other people. So your private information is out there. Your socials on these contracts.
A friend of mine looked up his car loan, and the value of it had gone up to like $680,000.
Absolutely.
I think it was, I won't say his name. I don't want to out him, but he's coming here today. And he's texted it to me. I was like, wait, what?
Yep.
Shit is crazy. So talk about the what's Ceste Trust?
Ceste.
Ceste is that the same thing as your Treasury Direct account?
Something like that. It's all connected back to the Ceste.
Okay.
The Treasury Direct is more so like a service to the Ceste.
Oh, okay.
When you start discharging and certain things, they have any interest bonds or things to send to you, they can do that through the Treasury Direct. So, but I mean, just to even speak on the Ceste and what exactly it is, and because again, a lot of people have you get the birth certificate authenticated, but they don't really know the depths of why. And again, this goes back to our English heritage. It goes all the way back to King Henry the Eighth, King Henry the Eighth in 1540. Yeah, King Henry, he had actually passed the first Ceste Act. He created the first Ceste Trust for the Englishmen at that time. And at that time in England, you had many people who were, they had the religious wars that were going on, Christianity and Islam. Well, you just had a lot of people who were leaving the country and things like that. And, and at this time when you had so many people who were leaving the country and just abandoning their estates, you kind of had King Henry, who was kind of like, yo, man, y'all are slowing up the whole commercial flow around here. Y'all are just leaving your estates, and just abandoning everything. So you know what? We're going to create this Ceste Trust. And after a certain amount of years, if you don't come back and claim your stuff, we're just going to assume control over it. You know what I'm saying? And, but if you ever do come back, you can come back and claim damages. You can come back and take control over this estate that we created for you. But we just assume control over it because you just left it. We thought you were gone. And I don't know if you've ever seen like the Robin Hood movie with Jamie Foxx, the newest, the latest one in there. And, because that part's like in the 1600s. Well, anyway, but when they ended up going off to war, some of the soldiers who were fighting for England, they went off to war and the sheriff assumed some of them were dead, so therefore that's when they ended up just taking their estates over and they ended up, controlling it. That was the earliest concepts of the Ceste Trust, because since they were dead, they were assumed dead at sea, because they went off across to go fight across the waters. And if they didn't come back in a certain time, they assumed they were dead at sea, and the state took control over their estate if they didn't have anybody there to control it. So that's when they ended up setting up these Ceste trusts. And it was like, all right, well, the state is saying that we're going to control your property unless you come back and take it as the beneficiary, because it's yours. You have the benefit to it. But if you don't ever come back and you don't know who you are, then we assume the control over all your property. So, that was the earliest parts of the Ceste. And then in 1666, that's when they had the other Ceste Act that was signed. And that's when they really brought in, really establishing and as far as like birthing it in with the birth certificates and giving you the trust from there. And, and then in 1707, and we were talking about when the UK came, when they finally took over all the sovereign England, Scotland, all of that, and they finally turned into the UK, that's when they said, well, you know what? We're going to use the Ceste account for corporate business. That's when the Pope, Roman, and they were like, yo, I think we can do business off of this, though. I think there's a business opportunity here. And then that's when they were like, Rome was like, you know what? I think we can go across the entire world and we could take all the gold and silver from all the indigenous nations. And then we can turn around and we can give them a central banking system that's really built off credit. in fake ass money. And if you, and this is exactly what he did, and from there, he went across, they used all the countries that were under the Roman Empire, and they used them to go and take over all these countries, take all the gold, and then replace them with, central banking systems. And here in America, they had the Federal Reserve Bank. That was in 1913, but the real one, they started way back in like the 1700s. There was two other, a lot of people don't know that they had two other central banks that were here in America before the Federal Reserve. And that was all just because the Rothschilds had been here since the 1700s trying to set up this bank. And then you had people like, what's his name? President Jackson that were going to war with him. Like, nah, man, you can't take this shit over, and they kept passing laws to go against the Rothschilds. Then that's why, after the Civil War happened and, and they were like, yo, Abe, you gonna get down or not? And Abe was like, no, we're gonna, Abe was going against the Rothschilds, so we know what happened in that story. And from there, that's when the Rothschilds and the bankers and everybody all came together and said, all right, now let's do this shit. Let's take it over and let's come up with this new corporation. And from there, and then in 1913, that's when all the bankers got together and said, yo, let's finally go ahead and create this last little central bank. And let's turn everybody in this motherfucker into a corporation and let's take all the gold. And let's just, all the gold, all the silver, and let's just give them a central banking system built on fake ass dollars. And that's when in 1933, like you were talking about, they had the Emergency Banking Act, and everybody was told to bring in their gold, in return for money. And all that money was fake. It was all fake ass money. They knew that, all built on credit that was
Federal Reserve notes. Yep. Even if you look at a dollar right now.
Don't even say it. It's a note.
It's not money.
Yeah.
That's a crazy thing I learned from Brandon. I was like, hey, define money. He said, well, if you look up the legal definition, it's gold and silver coins. Anything other than that is not money.
Yeah. I mean,
which is true because therefore you can't owe money, right? You literally can't be in debt. You can't have a student loan debt. You can't have mortgage debt. You can't have tax debt because there's no money to owe.
If you could understand, if people understood just that simple part right there, how is there anything to owe? Because I used my social in that consumer credit transaction anyway. And according to 15 USC 1602I, it actually tell you in any consumer credit transaction, the actual natural person is the one extending the credit. And we know businesses aren't natural people because they know that everything was given to us from God. Again, this is trust law.
Yeah.
So they gave us this trust, this social to actually pay for everything. But how slavery works, because you pay for everything when you give them your social. Now how slavery works is, well, let's not tell them that everything is paid off, but let them go work a 9-to-5 job, slave, and still go and double dip and pay us again a second time around for something that was paid off the moment you gave me your social. But that's how they keep everyone trapped in the matrix. Because if everyone in the matrix knew that everything was already paid, the whole world would be different. Who would be working a job? For what? For why? Everything's already paid for. So, and that would mean that we the people have more time for ourselves, for our family, to think, to operate. And that's exactly what this system doesn't want you to do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They have to,
because we would have the time and energy and resources to build a new parallel system.
Bro, we build our own whole worlds. All of us would out here if we knew everything was paid for already. But that's why the elite are the elite and, the lower class is the lower class. And the only thing that's different between all of us is education. Nobody, truth be told, some of us might have more assets than others. But when it comes to money, we're all unlimited. We all have credit. You know what I'm saying? And when you went to go pay for your bills or your lights or your water, we all gave them the social. You know what I'm saying? Hell, your water and your lights is always paid for. Always. You know what I'm saying? Just because you extended the credit to pay for it. So it's like once I started learning the consumer laws and I started learning the laws that even backed up that said that I was the creditor, that's when I really got to tripping. I really started tripping. I was like, yo, hold on, you're telling me that everything is already paid for in commerce? And, and then when it's one thing to just, because you hear that all, oh, yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. But then when you start seeing the laws, like 15 USC 1602 that explains, wait a minute. And then you go into 15 USC 1692, which is actually talking about how we can charge these people thousands of dollars every single violation. That's when I was like, whoa. So you mean to tell me when they send me a bill This is full of all kind of violations where they violated my rights and I could send them a bill back to charge them for that. And they were like, yep. And once I stepped into that power, that's when I started learning how to discharge, because that's what the whole discharge game is. It's about basically stating and standing on your power, already knowing that, yo, I extended the credit to you and you tried to loan it back to me with interest. And now you're saying that I owe you, but the debt's already been paid. You know what I'm saying?
This piece right here is so hard for me to understand, probably equally for many people listening. It like the programming is so deep. From the time, you're 16, 18, whatever, and you start getting credit. You really want your good credit score and all this stuff. And then it's so trippy when you start looking at bills that you get, say a credit card statement, your utility bill. The balance is always positive. There's never a minus sign. They're saying you owe, it's already paid. It's so crazy that like when you get a bill, it's a negotiable instrument. It's like a blank check. But we think, because we've been conditioned to think that
we gotta pay these bills.
We owe that money. It's crazy, dude.
And for me, that was one of the first mind-blowing ones. With endorsing the bills and different things like that, and just security instruments. That blew my mind. When I kind of first came in that, and just knowing that this has been in front of me my whole life. And I'm like, yo, it's always been in the positive. It's always, and it'll even tell you, cut off the coupon at the bottom. It's that the instructions have always been there, but we've been so programmed, we've never even, paid attention. And it was crazy. My little nephew was playing a little Spider-Man game the other day. And he was like, I forgot what part it was with him being Peter Parker or something, but he ended up going into a store. He signed up for something and, for his little apartment. They play like the whole game, but it's crazy because he got a bill in the game and they sent him a bill in the game. And even in the game, it had the little bottom coupon part where he could cut it off and endorse it. I'm like, yo, Peter Parker finna get them bills paid today. Peter Parker about to endorse those bills, man. But it's just funny because they even put it in games and put it in your face because they know we have no clue what's going on. But it's like those of us, that's why I was like, man, when you come into the know, when you truly are reborn again, because your whole mind frame is different. How you handle, that's what the status correction is. How you handle business is different now. How you handle your bills is different now. How you handle the police is different now. How you handle your courtroom situations is different now. That's what correcting my status is. It's not so much about a certain piece of paper that someone might have you send in. Like I say, all the paperwork part probably accounts for 5%. I would just say, like having the passport and the different things like that in their system where they can when they can run your passport and I can look and see, damn, even with the information from our system that we gave him, it even says that do not search, do not detain. So he's not just talking shit. He's actually done something in the system where the system's telling me he's different. So whatever it is, let me wrap this shit up. You good. You go. Have a good day. Because they know we can't. That's what they have the computers for. And every single cop car. So it's just like, man, once I've learned all of this, being different, operating different, you're handling your bills different. It's a total mind-boggling life transfer. Like it's a whole shift. Everything changed. And the bills part, I was like, the bills part is kind of like, at the higher upper echelon part. I always tell people to handle the trust first, get your basics out the way, get your estate set up, because you have some people who are just so hungry to start getting into the discharge game that they'll just totally forget all of the basics and go straight to that. Then you discharge, let's say a car or a house, but then yet you still got taxes because you don't know how to handle that. You're still paying this. So it's like you're still stuck in the game and they can still just take your property from a tax lien or something because you didn't know the game. You didn't know the laws. You didn't know, so that's why I was like, learn the basics first, because if you know the basics first and when it's time to discharge and stand on that square, boom, you bulldozing. At that point, it's like, oh, I got the law. I got different bullets. What you want? Consumer law? You want equity law? You want constitutional law? You want tribal law? So it's like, when you get to that point, then that's when they know, okay, he's actually one of the ones who actually does know. Go ahead and discharge. It's a game. Go ahead and discharge it. He's 1 out of 100. But the other ones, I'm gonna play with him for a while. I'm gonna see if, I'm gonna send him a few letters back. We're gonna respond, go back. Because of how you respond as a consumer is going to let me know if you really know the law or not. Because if you really know the law, you're not going to sit there and keep arguing all day back and forth through those letters. Once I got you an administrative default, I'm about to go take you to court and I'm going to get my remedy, period. And I'm going to win because I got the evidence. once they know you know the game, and let's say you even take it that far to even, petitioning and opening up a courtroom and they get served with something, that's when you go ahead and get that call. And so yes, Mr. White, we were trying to see if we can go ahead and settle this outside of court. We'll go ahead and remove the account. And that's why I was like, bro, but y'all could have did that from Jump Street. Now I'm kind of mad, and now I want to charge you for that. You know what I'm saying? But since I'm feeling good, it's a Sunday, whatever, Sunday, fun day, we cool, we're going to let y'all go. I want it totally removed off my credit report, and I want it as if it never even existed. Sure enough, they're going to remove that whole account like it never existed. And I mean,
and you've done this stuff yourself?
I got a Maserati Ghibli. I got a BMW i8. I got the Tesla Model 3. Model X. I got the Tesla Model 3. I got my dad a Mercedes C350. Yeah, man, 5 cars, and I'm about to go get that Tesla truck, bro. But at the end of the day, it's all once I go into that dealership and I give you that Social Security and I fill out that consumer application and I give you the down payment, which I don't even have to give you that. That's voluntarily. On the actual contract, it says that. But if I give you that down, as soon as I leave the parking lot, all right, no, it's a wrap. It's over with. You'll never see this car again. And that's all I pay is my down payment. And really, I don't have to do that. But I do that as a courtesy because I know that the salesman, he gets a piece of that. So I'm like, cool. Thank you for giving me some of your time today. If I have to pay $1,000 or $2,000 down for this $60,000, $80,000 car, that's cool because that's all they're going to get from me.
So when you're filling out your loan application, you're doing a special endorsement. Is that how that's happening? Not a blank endorsement, or you just like a dumbass like we all are? We just sign our name, and then now they take that negotiable instrument. It has value. They take it to the Federal Reserve window or the bank or whatever. They get paid. Then they start sending you fake bills, and they get paid twice.
Always reserve your rights when you sign.
Right.
I would say that.
Is that like without recourse?
Yeah. I would always, at least put that under your signature, UCC 1308, reserve your rights. Because again, when a matter does come up in court, you can always say, well, hold on, check out that original contract. I signed it, but I reserved my rights on there. I have the ability to come back and get my remedy if, you did something wrong in the contract. So, and reserving the rights and all that stuff is cool. But with stuff like cars and things like that, the real way, how that really works, and I guess I'll just go ahead and give y'all the source on this one. But the way that really works is because they fraud you. Again, when you go into these car dealerships, and a lot of people don't really know this, but usually when you leave that car dealership, like they don't want you to bring that car back because you've already signed the note, and as soon as you leave, they're sending that to the bank to cash out, because they know as soon as that bank gets that note that you signed there, they actually, all right, the bank goes and cash out, gives them some bread for that. And then the bank takes it and flips it 10 times. You know what I'm saying? Right. So they already know that. So that's why when you leave that dealership, what they're supposed to inform you about is your right of rescissions. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has 72 hours to rescind any auto contract. I drove it for a couple of days. I didn't like it. I'm bringing it back. Maybe I want something else, or maybe I just want my money back. You know what I'm saying? But a dealer will never tell you that. But that's federal law and it's state law that they have to give you your right of rescission. And it's supposed to come in a whole total separate package and mailing sent to your house. This is in the law. But none of us, when we bought a car, they never send you a separate mailing to your house informing you of your rights of rescissions, ever. And that's because we don't really want you to bring the car back because we are already flipping your note. How would we look if 2 days go by and then you bring the car back and we've already sent your note to the bank to be flipped and we got paid already? And now you're telling me, and we've already paid out the little car dealer. Now we done paid out everybody who played their role in it. And now you're telling me now that you brought the car back after 2 days, I'm supposed to go back and get all that from those people? Like, nah, hell nah. The car dealer don't want to do that. So that's why he doesn't tell you about your rights and rescissions, because we don't want you to bring it back. And that's why he's like, yo, make sure it's the final car you want. As soon as you drive off the lot, the car loses value and all this. Yeah. That's all bullshit. But they just really don't want you to bring the car back, because after those 72 hours, that car is stuck on you. You know what I'm saying? And it's hitting your credit report then. You've paid for it. And the only way to get rid of it then is like, I got to sell it, or I got to, whatever, file bankrupt, whatever. But that's why I was like, once I understood the car contract part, so I was like, I can get as many cars as I want to now, just because of the simple fact that I already know y'all are going to fraud me. I'm going to buy this car. After 3 days go by, I'll be waiting by the mail. And the third day, like, did anything come today? No, sir. Like, I know it didn't. because as soon as that mail didn't come through and those 72 hours went by and you didn't give me my notice of rescission, oh yeah, I'm going to start filling out my paperwork. You know what I'm saying? Because according to the law, we can actually, because they benefit off your social. They benefited. They got money off the promissory note. So according to the law, it says you can keep the property because they got the benefit already. You know what I'm saying? And then basically you can even make them return your actual title because they hold, when you buy a car, they hold possession of it till you finish paying it off. Nah, that title belongs to you now too, because that's your property now. They frauded you. So you get to keep the property and the titles that come along with it. And they get to keep the benefit that they made from it, which was the money that they made off your social.
Wow.
It's really all business.
That's crazy.
It's banking.
Is part of the fraud too that they're not disclosing that you're using a blank endorsement?
Absolutely. All of that. Because they know that, that's
because you're basically signing a blank check on that application.
And that's what a house, all of that, same thing, but it's like, it's not their right to disclose the law to you. It's your right to be informed on your rights, so just knowing those simple things in the laws to say about your right of rescissions, or even knowing that it's a promissory note, any of that, it's not their job to educate you. But if you are educated and you go in there, you can pretty much get what you want, especially if you got a good credit score. I'll just tell you that. That's all that is. The good credit score. Credit score doesn't mean nothing. Whether you really have an 800 or a 500, y'all could both afford the same things. The reason I say it's no different is because credit is credit. They're gonna pull it. It's all about, they know that if you have that high credit score, this is somebody who pays his bills. This is somebody who's always on time. You know what? It's safe to go ahead and give him a loan because he's going to pay us back, but that person with the 500 credit score is like, we give him a loan. He might not be a good slave and bring us back that money. Nah, let's not go ahead and let's not fund his loan. Even though the credit is all the same, they can pull it from the treasury and get it the exact same way, but it's all about slavery. I need you to work and pay me off. So that's why, once you do the status correction, get your estate together, you get your credit straight, all of that good things. Now, once you get to that 700, you ain't never got to go back ever. You know what I'm saying? Because any credit account that gets added on there, when you understand credit, most of the time they frauded you because, again, like you said, you gave them a promissory note. They didn't disclose all of the things and some other shit that comes along with it. So it doesn't matter if it's school loan, cars, houses, they're always frauding you, because they're saying that you were the debtor, but it's like, no, according to 15 USC 1602, I in a consumer credit contract, I extended the credit. So how the hell am I paying y'all every month? Matter of fact, send me back every single dollar I sent you all. And you can actually do that. You can make them pay you back every dollar that you've paid into this trust account. Because every time all this, I'm going off now. All this always goes to trust. And any single time you ever gave someone your social security number, you trusted them. And you created a trust. I bet when you go and look at your water bill, your school loan bill, whatever, there's always an account number there. And that account number represents a trust that has been created.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
On behalf of your social, which means something was already paid off and now they owe you a service or a product in exchange. Now, if it's a service, you had an open-ended credit contract. That means they have open-end access to always getting your credits. And really, they could pay your bills every month off of that. You know what I'm saying? So it's about, when you understand, that's when I was like, it's one thing to be status correction, but it's another when we start thinking and moving like bankers. We have to move like bankers. And that's when you start getting into the security instruments. And because again, this is all trust. You've set up trust with all of these companies on behalf of your social. And you are in benefit of this. You're the beneficiary. This all goes back to God's law. You're the beneficiaries and these people are trustees for you. And they have fiduciary duties according to the law. And if they don't perform these fiduciary duties, then they violated the Trust Indenture Act. You know what I'm saying? And this goes back to the early 1900s. If you violate that act, the whole SEC can come run up in your shit, like in that company. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, once you know the law and you know the people to report them to and get on their ass, they move totally different. Because again, it becomes a game. Oh, well, sir, you're like, damn, I just got this new Tesla truck, boy. I know it's 100,000. They ain't gonna want to let this one go. I'm prepared for war. They're gonna want to fight me. But when they see you unload on them and they say, oh no, you good, sir. You have a good day. because you're literally 1 out of 100 who knows the game. If anything, I just want to say thank you and have a good day, because I really don't want you to go out here and expose the game. And what I've always heard, they give black cards. I don't know too many people who have them, but, from the teachers that have actually taught me and what they've told me, if you're going to get a black card, all that is unlimited access to your social. That's it. We already kind of have that now. We're on the consumer side, on the public side, and they know most of us don't know law. So they're going to keep playing with us. But when they know you know the game and you're private, you got some things, but you're willing to contract. You got a contract with them. They're like, all right, we'll give you that black card, but you're not allowed to speak on this. You can't speak why you got it, how you got it. Then that's when you got to play that role. I got to go be that quiet man in the corner while I just watch the rest of the world go to shits. You know what I'm saying? And for me, that was never really an option that I wanted to take, because it was like I could still get those same benefits by just knowing the law and teaching my people that way without having to sign a contract just to be on hush. Because one thing you're not going to do, you're not going to renege on those contracts. You renege on those contracts. We know what happens. They come for your head. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's business, and it's always been business. And I just always think about some of the greats like the Malcolm X's and the Martin Luther Kings and some of the ones that even had those movements. But again, it was like, brother, you can't be on the plantation of the United States Corporation and think you can talk shit and not have your affairs together. You know what I'm saying? This is what the status correction is about. You got to hop your ass off the plantation. Then you can talk your shit, but you can't talk it if you're still a 14th Amendment slave registered to their system. But, unfortunately, that was the 50s and the 60s. We've improved their game so much even since then. They weren't talking about ceste cuvee trust back then, trust law. They were just like, power to the people. Let's march. It was like, nah, brother, this is about banking. That's what that whole bond was, that bond instrument, that birth certificate. We got to take time to understand the banking side of things now. All that emotional shit, quiet it. It's time to be businessmen now. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is. And once because again, I went to school for business. So when my friends were so emotional about all of this, I was like, it made so much sense to me on the business side. I'm like, dog, they got a president. They got a treasury. I have a company. I'm the president of my company. I have a treasury. So I was like, damn, they're just running this shit like a business. And we're the employees. And I'm like, oh, that's when I started getting into tax exemptions. That's when I was like, well, damn, they got a W-4 for the slaves. And then they have a W-4V where you can voluntarily choose not to pay your damn taxes using their forms. And I'm like, damn. It's like they've always given us an out, but they never educated us about it. If you want to pay taxes, if you think you're a U.S. citizen, if you think you're taxable, you're damn right you're going to be. But if you know the law and you know how to assert yourself, trust me, they always had the back door waiting for you. And that's why I was like, whoa, they got a whole W-4V form, and this is a real IRS form saying that when I get my paycheck from my job, you got to pay me everything and don't take out the taxes. And it's like, all right, well, cool. Once I learned that, my businessman hat went on. I was like, okay, so if I'm getting my check in full, then, I'm just going to turn around and create a foundation or a church, and I'm going to donate my funds in Jesus' name. And I'm going to go work for my church as a volunteer, and I'm going to just filter my funds through the church and pay myself out as a volunteer. You know what I'm saying? It's really just business and filtering. But when you think about it, all these NFL players, their agents always have them do one thing. They'll go and set up a foundation, and that's really not just because they care for the people. It's because they filtering their money through their tax-free, you know what I'm saying? Through their foundations. That's exactly why every, damn near sports player always has a foundation.
And politicians,
And politicians.
You look at these Bill Gates and the Clinton Foundation.
All that. They always have these foundations because it's really fulfilled them, but you never really know what the foundation does or where all these funds really go because they're private foundations.
Right.
I don't have to, exploit that information to you. So it's just like, man, once you just start getting into knowing the status, understanding the tax exemptions, everything, they got so many forms just from the IRS. And I had just dropped one on my page last week, talking about being a religious minister. Anybody has the right. Like right now, we're having church by fellowshipping. You know what I'm saying? The lifestyle is church. This is we having church right here.
It pretty much is, actually.
Yeah, real talk. And you are a minister of this church right now. So it's like just even doing that and running it that way and running this as a church. Even your whole house, this is a temple. Every time my feet hit the ground here, it's a blessing. It's a temple. If you just start to operate your affairs in that way, those tax exemptions come right off, because there's one thing, if they don't respect anything here in America, they respect religion. You know what I'm saying? That's why I said, bro, once I understood that, I don't have time to be Bloods, Crips, this, that, whoop, whoop. I'm like, no, I'm about to play the game. It doesn't matter if you're, Muslim, play the game. And once I understood that, I'm like, yo, life just became easy, man. Taxes, what are those? And then that's when you just, once you really get good at it, that's when you start building your portfolio, and building a portfolio. Because in the beginning, I just wanted to get cars. I was just testing things out. Like, bro, this really works. Let me get whatever car I want. But, after a while, you get humble and you like, bro, what am I really doing this for? Am I really doing this just because I wanted to shine? I want to get all these great things for me? Or is it like, yo, I want to actually build something to actually benefit not only myself, but my family and my community? So, once I set it up like that, man, that's when I created the whole iselfloanmaster.com, a whole online university to educate the people. And, that's when I felt like I really found my purpose, because it was like I'm educating the world. And, I could charge a very decent, good price for it, not even high. I know you'll never get this in college. I could charge 1/10 of what they charge you in college for inferior knowledge. And I can give you the game that's going to change your life forever. And it was like, man, I was good. First time in my life, I had no worries, no bills, no woo. And then it was like, once you knew the law, you didn't have bills anyway. Then it was like all the money that is coming in from your business ventures, that's just extra shit that you just get to go convert into silver and gold and turn into real assets. I got all the credit that I need to operate in their commercial world. Now, just from the business ventures and things that I create, now I can get earnings and turn that into real assets and real substance. You know what I'm saying? Instead of having a whole bank account full of fake numbers and digital numbers in a bank, that means nothing. Nah, smart people, wise, wealthy men, they go and get that gold and that silver. So it's like you use credit to operate in their world, to build your businesses. You use loans, you use credit, but then you turn around and it's like, with the earnings that you make from your businesses, that's when you get the silver and the gold. You know what I'm saying? So even when their economy crashes and goes to hell tomorrow and that dollar crashes, everybody who had those money in the bank accounts, going to hell. Everybody who, all of that dollar bills, all that money sitting up under your bed, those dollar bills are worthless now. But those people who have that gold and that silver, it's going to skyrocket. You can go to Chinatown, you can go to any place, and they're still going to accept that silver and gold anywhere. And matter of fact, the silver, I always tell people, if you're going to get either silver or gold, get the silver. Just because, in times of war, and we're about to go back into times of war now, silver is used for colloidal silver. It's used for bullets. It's used for armory. It's used for all of this. So the demand for silver is going to skyrocket, just like it did back in the past. It went literally from like $15 an ounce to like $500 an ounce in times of war.
It's also easier to parse out, right?
Yeah,
like say that because I play around with buying a little gold and silver here and there, and it's like, if you got a gold bar that's worth $5,000, how are you going to take that down to the local farmer and be like, hey, can I get a few pounds of beef?
Yeah. You're going to have to give your whole.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, nah,
it's harder to get it in incremental denominations. Mm-hmm. Whereas like silver, I mean, you can literally it can be worth $1 or it could be worth $100 or whatever. Yeah. So it's like, it seems to be more spendable in a situation like that to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly why I do silver. I prefer silver over the gold. But I mean, both of them are valuable. But like you said, the gold, it's much harder to break down in an economical way, you know. And when you're talking about sovereignty, and when it really gets down to it, you're going to want to be able to do business and trade with people as much as possible. And unless you're starting to write promissory notes off of coins that you have in your bank or something, I don't know. Now, that's a whole nother conversation. But, me personally, just going back to the times and the ancient ways, man, and that's what we're about to go back to. Even before the gold and silver here, just on our tribal ways, we used to have, beads and, and these were like, we had Hishi beads and things of that nature. And like this one bead right here, I would pass this whole necklace down to my son. Let's say I owned those 20 acres over there, you know what I'm saying? And every single acre was represented by a stone, and it's like, oh, well, if I'm trading with another tribe and I'm doing business, I'd be like, all right, well, here, so I'm going to give you 2 stones, which is those 2 acres over there in return for this and that. That's how we used to do business back in the day. Our jewelry, our Hishi beads, like that was our form of money. So until like Britain and, all of them came over here, that's when they changed the game and were like, nah, get off this. And that's why they call it the black market, because it was a market with the Hishi beads and things that we did, but they called it the black market. That's illegal. We don't want you doing that. That's the black market. We want y'all to use these dollar bills. We want y'all to use this Federal Reserve system. So we had to get the indigenous people off of their way of even operating. But now we're about to kind of go back to that with the crypto and all of those other kind of things, man. So you just have so many different, it's so many different aspects to the status correction part,
this shit
bro.
is mind-blowing, bro.
Yeah.
I'm like...
I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, I'm eating it up, man. You're doing such a great job. You have such a skill for breaking down complexity into something that I think is, it's not, I won't say it's easy to understand, but there's been cats teaching this stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
And
it's so complex to grasp.
Dude, it's just like you feel the truth in it. You know, it's like you feel your nervous system go, ooh, there's something there. There's a pull toward it because you're hearing reality. But it's kind of like, you watch a few videos, read a bunch of shit on some website, and you're like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
You're not really left with actionable, tactical steps. Yeah. So
that's crazy. That's exactly why I created Our Self-Law, though. Because it's like our people need step-by-step instructions.
Yes.
Just like school.
So we're going to put the show notes for this one at lukestorey.com/Brotha Truth.
Yes,
BROTHA, Brotha Truth. And we're going to link out to all your courses, your tour dates.
Man,
all the stuff that you're doing, man. 'Cause it's like you're like a musician. You go on tour. I was looking on your site. And I'm like, oh, he's in this city, that city. And I was like, I hope I can get him before he goes on tour.
Yeah.
Man, but I love that you're putting the power back in people's hands, and there's only a certain percentage of people that are going to be willing to educate themselves and to take these steps. Maybe it's probably better that there's only a select group of people that really gets the fire under their ass, because they're probably the ones that are going to do it right and be good stewards of this power that, you're learning how to harness. But man, hearing you talk helps me lean more into the idea that we're at the beginning stages of a great awakening.
Absolutely. More
so than we are at the collapse of Western civilization. It's probably both, right? It's probably both to some degree, but I'm like, no, man, this is real. This isn't, running through the streets, lighting shit on fire with picket signs and F the man, and, all that like low vibe, like way that we think we can change things. This is like cool. To me, it's very diplomatic, because you go, okay, you have the U.S. corporation and you have these federal citizens, you have all these limited rights, and they have this whole fake banking system, fiat currency.
Yeah.
There's no way you're going to tear that down, right? It's just too established.
It's like it's been around for too long. Yeah.
It's like going up my yard trying to like pull over an oak tree. It ain't going to happen, but what you can do is you can plant a bunch of other trees around it.
That's exactly
and it's going to take a little time for those trees to grow up and equal the integrity of that oak tree. But man, to me, it's all about parallel systems and self-responsibility. As I said earlier, self-love.
Yeah.
And there's a certain number of us that feel called to this kind of work and are willing to do it.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm so glad you keep touching on that self-love, because again, that's for me, that's what really sparked the light. Like I said, when I beat that traffic stop and the police officer walked off, it was a whole new burst of love, a whole new burst of like, man, I am somebody. I am valuable, and especially for, myself, it was like, yo, I'm more than just, a black or someone that, they see in the streets that they could just shoot down. I'm not a gang. I'm a educated, enlightened man now.
Yeah.
I'm just the whole light, everything about how I walk kind of started changing. I walk with a different little stature now, and it's just like, because I'm confident. It gives you confidence.
Well, dude, that's the thing. When you describe that interaction with the policy enforcer, what I heard was you exercised self-respect.
Yeah.
And it ingratiated respect from him to you, right? It's like, how many of us in our lives have been, man, you better respect me. You better respect me. It's like, we don't actually have ownership of that within ourselves yet. So it falls on deaf ears, and we don't get the reciprocation of that respect because we actually don't have it yet. We're not embodying it yet.
Come on.
So I hear that policy officer kind of gives you that
Yeah,
smirk.
he gave me that smirk. He was like,
he's like, right on.
Yeah.
Right? Because you didn't yell out the window, you need to respect me.
Yeah. No cursing, no none of that.
Yeah, you just exercised your own self-respect, and he mirrored that back to you, which is really how that works on an energetic level.
You treat people how you want to be treated, man.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you don't come in that energy, they don't really come back. That's why I always tell people, man, it's very rare that a cop just comes to your car, hey, mother, get on the floor. No, it's like they have to start, like you have to become combative. No, I'm not going to do that. No, you can't tell me what to do. Then that's when they start, let me touch on this side, that's when things start getting a little funny, man. Yeah,
because if you don't show them respect, there is no way on hell they're going to issue you respect.
Absolutely not. And even if they know your status or not, like if they haven't had the chance to check your status, that's why I always say, like, even when we're smart, even when we're in our correct status, still keep a calm, cool head because he doesn't know who you are until maybe he scans that passport or sees your tribal ID or whatever it may be, your private ID. Until he sees that, he's still assuming that you're a regular U.S. citizen like anybody else. But once he hears that conversation, you speak with intelligence, you speak constitutionally and direct to the things that he swore an oath to, the whole energy is different. They're like, it's actually like pleasing. They actually get a kick out of it. Like some of them would be like, yo, can I have can we talk about this? Or me, even police officers would be like, yo, man, I don't want to learn some of that stuff you're talking about.
I've seen some videos where, they have that interaction and then, they got to get a superior and another superior. Next thing you know, got 3 or 4 policy officers there asking questions. Oftentimes it's the superiors that come in and they're like, tell me more about this. What's up with it? You know what I mean? It's like when everyone calms down, then it's like you see a couple policy enforcers being like, like, what is this thing? Yeah, it's cool. And then you can see the wheels turning and they're like, man, I'm going to go look this up for myself. Right?
Absolutely.
Because they're also in the system too. Even though they're the policy enforcers, they're still under the jurisdiction of that policy unless they change it, Yeah. So it's like they're getting victimized through taxation and all this other shit too.
And that's what they don't want us to know, the people. They don't want us to act as the people, and they just want us to play a position, play a role. Because once we wake up, we the people, that means that the police got to wake up. That means the military has to wake up. That means all these people are going to wake up. Then those few elites that you have at the top, who's going to protect them? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
mutiny.
So
then you got mutiny on the bounty.
Yeah. So that's why we have to keep ignorance at an all-time high. Always. Because if you ever have time to sit down and think, then you're going to start realizing that this is all a shit show here. What's going on? You know what I'm saying? And you're going to start asking questions, and that's when you're going to walk yourself right out the matrix. Then when you're out, then it's like, oh, I got all the power. So it's like, man, I always watch movies like with two actors, man, Keanu Reeves and Will Smith. Both of them always tell you about what's to come in these kind of movies. The Matrix and John Wick. Well, both movies about sovereignty. Even at the end where they said John Wick was dead when he really wasn't, and they showed his tombstone with his name in all caps. They were trying to say he was dead, but really we all knew John Wick was still alive in his living spirit. He was alive, but they just had a tombstone that said he was dead. But that kind of that goes with how commerce works. When you're first born into this system with your name all caps, you're literally dead. Truly. That estate is dead. You know what I'm saying? So it's funny because, your name, you've been converted to all caps, but John Wick was telling you, nah, they do everything sovereign. They don't even use regular money in that movie. They use gold. They use this. They did certain things because they were moving under really common law, I would like to say. But everybody else that was operating outside of their little private system was all operating as, regular slaves of the system. So, it was the same thing. And it's like, and movies like Will Smith, the iRobot, things like this. So, I mean, it's crazy. I went into the Tesla store the other day. They have those robots on sale for $20,000.
What?
They're the home
Are you
robots.
Serious?
Yeah, they will be your home helper. Absolutely. They have the robots. You can start pre-sale ordering them now. So what we saw in that movie with iRobot, and Will Smith, he's had other movies too. I ain't gonna get into the Men in Black and things of that nature but these two actors are always telling you something subliminally in a lot of their movies. Keanu Reeves especially with the Matrix but yeah, it's very real and it's so dope. Even in the Matrix, it's so real that they showed you the Frenchmen always had the power. You know, in order to get back and forth through the Matrix, you had to go through the Frenchman. And even in the last John Wick 4, you had the Frenchman who had all the power. It's always the Frenchman. It's because everything started with the Frenchman going all the way back to England in 1066. I had it wrong. It was 1066 when the Frenchmen had came and conquered them with the Battle of Hastings. So ever since then, Frenchmen had ruled the English throne and had ruled it for many, many generations. So everybody always knows when you're talking about English common law now, you know, that all really starts with the Frenchmen who came in and took over the Anglo-Saxons, and they came together and created a whole new English law system. And they said, well, you know what? The Frenchman's in control now. But that's why in the movies like The Matrix and John Wick, he always played that important role where the Frenchman was always like the big man, the bad guy, all, you know, with all the money. It's because, yeah, he was the king that took over England back in the day, and still France is still very much in power, you know? So, but that's why you have France. Who else is it? DC and what is it? The Vatican that have these big obelisk.
Yeah.
And yeah, they all represent, like, one is the military capital of the world. France is like the financial capital of the world. And I forgot which one.
They have one in DC too.
Yeah. So it's like all of these are, you know, they're the pendulums, you know, I mean, just different things showing, like, the markings of just showing how they're all connected. But at the end of the day, every single country played a major role in this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And France is one of the most powerful ones of the whole Roman Empire. You know what I'm saying?
I had no idea.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Wild.
So yeah, that's why, you know, a lot of them over there in Rome, man, a lot of them speak French. They speak, you know, Spanish. But a lot of them, man, most popes speak multiple languages because they need to know those languages in order to control all those different countries. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why I always tell people, like, you know, they conquered the world. More than damn near 50% of Catholics in the world are from South Americas. And why do they think that is? It's because the Roman Empire sent out, you know, Germany, France, Portugal, Spain, all of them out there to the Americas. And that's what they conquered, and they converted them. You can go down there now and see all these Catholic churches.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and that starts all the way back with Rome. And once we got you in the church, well, then, yeah, we're going to go ahead and pull you into the commercial system too as well. In Jesus' name. You know what I'm saying? That's exactly how they do it. But they didn't teach you the trust law side. They just taught you the codes and statutes side for the slave, never the free man's part. So just once you know the basics, you know, it all boils down to public, private, military law, military law, English common law. I mean, that's literally it. You know, everything, you know, a secured party creditor, debtor, you know, so it always has a positive, it always has a public and a private aspect to all of it. Constitutional, codes and statutes, public, private. Well, if you could just learn, if y'all don't take anything from this podcast, you take knowing the difference between public and private, constitutional, codes and statutes, knowing your English common law rights compared to knowing these fake ass codes and statutes that they try to oppress you with. I'm telling you, if you can just know that basic right there, your whole life will be changed, man.
I love you, bro. Saying? You're the best, man.
Oh, thank you.
This has been so fun. Thank you so much.
We definitely have to do this again.
Yeah, there's so much more to cover. There was a couple other things I wanted to get into, and we have a whole squad that just arrived here. I'm like, no, cool. I'm like, it'll be another hour if I do that. So we'll do a part 2. You're only over in Houston. I appreciate you coming out here. Luckily, you have a love interest in this area, which worked out great for me.
Yeah.
And again,
I'm
you guys
here all the time. Now,
yeah,
man.
I love it. The show notes are lukestorey.com/Brotha Truth, and we're going to link out again to your tour. You got all kind of online training programs, like a real wealth of information that we didn't even tap into a lot of the stuff you teach. So yeah, man, I look forward to seeing you again.
Man, well, I thank you, man, and I appreciate you for having me on. It's very rare that I have outlets that I can even talk and express this kind of information too, man. So I thank you. I thank you. Your followers, your listeners, for even giving me the opportunity to come in here and express myself, man. Thank you, and I appreciate you, brother.
Likewise.